Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today, Customer Success Hidden Gold, Frontline Insight for Strategic Advantage. So we have some really exciting topics that we're going to cover today. So our agenda today is going to cover through three different things. So we're going to talk about what our customer success team's hearing and why does that matter. I imagine many of you out there in the audience know what you're hearing and really excited to dig into this topic. Where can that customer success frontline intelligence help the business? And then how can SaaS functional leaders use those frontline insights at scale, whether it's customer teams, product teams, business line leaders. There's a lot of great nuggets that we know come right from our frontline teams and what we're hearing from customers. And so I want to introduce who we are today. So my name is Mike Redd. I'm the CMO here at Quala. I'm joined by our two great speakers today, Seth Warren, our Director of Customer Success at Hyperproof, and Sonciary Perez, co-founder of Quala. Seth, want to hand off to you for a quick intro.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Mike. Again, my name is Seth. I'm the Director of Customer Success at Hyperproof here in Seattle, Washington. I've been with Hyperproof for going on 2 years now, right there from the very beginning, I think, with a lot of early stage tech companies. It's not uncommon that you hear the first CS hire was the one who's leading the team. So that's kind of the way it shook out here at Hyperproof. A little bit about us. We're a compliance operations and continuous assurance platform focused on information security and data privacy. So we work in areas like SOC 2 and ISO 27001 and GDPR and all the stuff we're all too familiar with in tech. We're starting to also break through into financial control management for enterprises focused on Sarbanes-Oxley, as well as environmental, social, and corporate governance work is a big area of focus for us in the new year as we get ready to get started there. And just a couple comments about our CS org. So we're small but mighty right now. It's a handful of us. We have a very high touch model. So we have named customer success manager per customer. We work really hard to be multi-threaded. So we loop in relationships from across the organization, but ultimately it's the CSM that's quarterbacking the operation. So that's a little bit about me and my org. So I'll hand it over to you, Sansi.
Thanks. And thanks so much for joining us. I think it's going to be a fun session today. Excited to hear a little bit more about, everything frontline intelligence. But I'm Sonciary Perez, co-founder of Koala.io. I've led customer success teams now for the last decade plus. It's kind of amazing and crazy to think. I felt like I've been there since the beginning. It's been a fun journey. And I think one of the things about being in customer success is that we operate with the innate belief that customers are our competitive edge and have the power to really power strategic decision making with the company overall. And it's with that belief that we created Koala. We are a frontline intelligence platform, and we quantify the interactions that are flowing between customers and customer success teams so that leaders can mine the data that's coming in so we can advocate for things like feature needs, upgrade opportunities, and even maybe discover the next big opportunity within our business. So excited for this conversation. Thanks, Seth, for joining us again. And thanks, Mike, for leading.
Great. Excellent. And again, a big hello to everybody who's joining us. Feel free to say hello on the chat. Jenna Kluger is our head of product marketing who is in the chat there with all of you. So feel free to say hello. I'll say a little bit more about Qual and then we'll dive right into the session. So as Santi was getting to, Qual is a platform that customer and product teams use to really quantify what customers are saying, teams are hearing, what customers are doing in their products. So you're putting customers at the center of your business and you're building your business on those insights. As Sansi said, we call that frontline intelligence. And so what does all of that mean? If you look at this next slide here, conceptually what we're doing is we're getting all that great customer data in one spot. So you have, what we've heard our customers call a single pane of glass, from product use, customer emails, team notes from CRMs, notes from Quala, contact data. All that great data is triggering book of business insights. So it could be functionality that's needed in the product, could be customer experience, things that could be improved, or specific customer workflows to better serve individual customers, to retain, educate, or to upsell customers in some cases if expansion is a priority. So that's what Quala is all about. If you're interested in learning more, please click the request Quala info button at the top of the webinar. So with that, we'll dive into our first topic today. So we'll look to Seth and Sansi for some great insights, and you'll hear me call Sonciary Sansi for short throughout. The first topic is, what are customer success teams hearing and why does that matter? And so I'll throw our first question out to the panel. customer success teams talk to customers every day. What are they hearing?
Yeah. It's a great question. I don't think it's too dissimilar across customer success organizations in the space that we work at. Customers come to us and they come to us because they have problems that they need to solve, right? And we hear that through a lot of different ways. They might be upfront about it, saying this is something that I really need to focus on and I need a solution for. They might say it's a workflow that they need a solution for. They might say it's a business problem that they need to solve for. But in any case, they're coming to customer success teams and they're saying, this is what we need your help with. In our space, for example, since we're working in compliance, we hear a lot of things like we need easier ways of collecting evidence. We need easier ways of proving compliance to auditors. We want to manage our complex compliance programs at scale. And some of that might be just things that we need to educate customers on, how the tool works, how they can layer features and functions over each other. But oftentimes it's something that we haven't heard yet, or it's a novel process. In compliance and things like SOC 2 and ISO 27001, it's not uncommon that you have two organizations maintaining compliance with the same standard, but they have radically different ways of achieving that compliance, right? So we're hearing new things every day. And, I think just to your point, Mike, where you're talking about the value proposition here for Koala, you call that frontline intelligence. That's exactly what it is. And it's really critical for us in customer success to communicate those items back to the broader team. So for us, what that means at Hyperproof is, for the product team, we want them to know about those novel processes or those business problems that customers are experiencing that we haven't heard about yet for a solution. And then also, for the broader go-to-market team, like, sales and marketing, we want to be able to harp those wins. We want to solve for those problems, and we want to communicate those wins back to product or to marketing and sales rather, so that they can go back to the community, they can go back to the marketplace and start communicating those out. So that's a lot of the stuff that we hear from customers is ultimately they're looking for value, and our incessant focus is making sure that they deliver that value.
That's great. Seth. It's great to hear that. And so as you're unpacking that, I'll probe a bit deeper, on with your team being so close to those customers, why is that input so valuable coming from what your team is hearing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. The input's valuable to us because like I said, we want to turn around and talk about these wins to the marketplace, right? The number one, I think we would all agree with this, is we want our customers to love us, right? Mm-hmm. And we feel like that's kind of the competitive mode that we've created for ourselves. We hear that coming out of the marketplace all the time, when the sales team will come back and say, we heard from a prospect that they heard about you because they really take, you're really taking care of your customers, right? Mm-hmm. And when we're listening to our customers and we're asking the right questions, that intelligence we feed back turns into new features that get delivered. A customer, one of my favorite things that we do is, we task the CSMs with capturing as much product feedback as we can, for example, and it might be just a comment that a customer made in passing. It wasn't actually an actual feature request that came from them. But whenever we go through a new release or we send our release notes out, that JIRA ticket gets closed and the customer gets notified that new feature gets delivered. They reach out and they go, I didn't even know that you were tracking that. That's amazing. My life is so much easier. Those are the small wins that, build a name for yourself in the marketplace. And that's really what we're after. That community the community reference just creates a lot of gravity for the go-to-market team to really, start bringing in new deals. It creates a lot of gravity for us on the CS side to not only retain, but upsell, right? As we're able to listen better and create more value, we have stronger legs to stand on when we want to, generate more revenue out of our existing customer base. So that's something that we really want to focus on. And one of the other things that we really pay attention to is, creating what we would call like a lighthouse customer, the ideal user, the one that we can go out and say, this is, when you use Hyperproof in this way and you harness the surface area of the product in its totality, you're going to create, you're going to yield these benefits. So, being able to collate that data, communicate it back, yield the results, and return it back out to our customers in the marketplace. That's why that input is so valuable.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. Points. I think just building on that, we know that the input is incredibly critical for our businesses, but it's really difficult in practice. We talk about customer centricity and the importance of customer centricity, but really practicing that from a day-to-day basis can be difficult. How do we turn anecdotes into analytics when it comes to the relationships and information that's coming in between customers and CSMs?
Right, right. And so it's so what I'm observing here, really important stuff that you're getting from the front line. When you get that right, Seth, I think you put it well. Like you're creating that, customer love, right? They see that you're listening and you're delivering back value on the product. But it's a problem, right? Getting all that because we know there's so many different signals. So maybe we double click on that a little bit. So let's say more about, the problem that's out there. And I think what's on the slide here is illustrating some of that pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can jump in here and say that, I mean, a little bit preaching to the choir, but CSMs, given our relationships that we have with customers, we typically know how happy a customer is with our product and with the value we're providing. They're two different things. How your customer is using their product and how they feel about the value that product is bringing to their lives. So CSMs build that relationship. It goes a little bit deeper. They understand the qualitative and quantitative associated with customer happiness. And it's because of those regular periodic interactions that are happening. Getting to know the customer at a deeper level, getting really close to them, understanding their needs. That's how the CSM turns into the face of our business. They are on the front lines. And they have an innate intelligence that can be difficult to mine across all CSMs and across all customers. So many cases, a lot of the information or insights that are coming in from CSMs, it's held captive in CRM notes, or maybe in a customer success platform note. Maybe it's in an email exchange. Maybe it's in a chat, maybe Slack, maybe Intercom, maybe in an NPS survey. And it can be a huge missed opportunity because looking at this information at scale across, again, all CSMs and all customers can be debilitating. Or if you want to peel or pick through that data, it can take weeks and weeks to provide a connected POV on what all of those interactions mean for how to make strategic decisions. So for us, it's okay, we see this as a problem. How do we streamline all this data and let leaders mine it so that we can gain access to this rich information of knowledge and use that to make better decisions?
Yeah. I totally agree. I think not collating that data, for one, is a huge missed opportunity for, lots of different reasons I think are self-explanatory. But ultimately, I think not democratizing that data is a huge risk to the organization, right? If we're not asking the right questions and we're not looking out for the right signals in customer success that, might be indicators for churn risk or indicators for dissatisfaction, you don't want that going back out into the marketplace and that being the name that you created for yourself, right? So I think, in getting ahead of that, in this, in this age of service delivery, data is king, right? And we have a saying here at Hyperproof, we say it all the time: "In God we trust, all others bring data." It's something that we say in every meeting, right? Anecdote doesn't fly. Like having it live in different disparate locations makes it impossible to make your business case. Not bringing it all together is a huge missed opportunity, but not making that widely available to the rest of the organization, I think, is a huge risk, and it's something that we focus on a lot here.
Cool. I love that. And, for folks who've been following Quala, we issued a blog post a couple of weeks ago, summarizing a handful of these different interviews we've had with execs, such as Seth. And, one of the things that we saw that was maddening in that is that, the teams know what they're hearing, but then they're getting asked for, well, how many times and who said it and how valuable are those accounts? And so it's that double click that I think, Seth, what, you and Sonciary are both getting at is, it's there, but you got to bring the data, to make the case internally. That's great.
Yeah, I think the social capital that's needed that we need to expend in order to convince our peers that action should be taken as a result of the anecdotes that we're seeing come in. It's very difficult for us as leaders, and it's difficult for CSMs. They're expending social capital. CS leaders are expending social capital. For us to have the data at our fingertips to turn those anecdotes into analytics, to turn the narrative into actual fact-based, is a bullhorn for the cause. And again, just puts us at ease as well. Sometimes we are making recommendations that are based on the last handful of conversations that we had because that's front of mind. So it helps check us in our recommendations, and it helps us advocate better for our customers to the larger org.
That's great. So I think that's a great segue to, the second topic of the session, which is, we spoke, conceptually, there's great information that customer success teams are hearing, why it's really important, how it's hard to organize all of that. Where exactly can customer success frontline intelligence help the business? So we'd love for us to dive into, specific examples of And they were peppered throughout, Seth, what you and Sansu were saying. But if we could just start by listing out, maybe go into a bit of detail of, those specific things that those customer success teams are hearing that can be helpful inputs to drive the business forward.
Yeah. I think the easy one in SaaS is, feature needs broadly. That's, we hear that all the time. I think all customer success organizations hear that every day. That's a no-brainer. But, I think a big one too for our go-to-market stakeholders is trends that we're seeing from existing customers, right? Sales and marketing teams are always coming to us in customer success. I have to imagine that this is similar at other startups. And, they're saying, how are customers using the tool? What are you all seeing? How do we go and talk to customers about this? Those are really valuable inputs to get back to those groups. And I think another big one that we think through and we're really starting to think through in great detail is where our expansion opportunities lie, right? There comes an inflection point in SaaS where your ARR is going to exceed your net new business coming in the door as you continue to add customers and they continue to renew, and that becomes your most significant, portion of your revenue. And as we pay attention to that side, that's the side that we really want to get right. We really want to have crisp data and crisp stories to tell around it. So yeah, those are some things for me.
Yeah, I would say on my end, so specifically around the customer lifecycle, we talk about how fragile the onboarding experience is and how important it is for us to note how to optimize that experience as quickly as possible, as proactively as possible. So looking for indicators, stage-specific indicators is pivotal. The other thing that I'll throw out there is, as constantly scaling and evolving companies do, we are frequently updating our messaging and our offering to the market. We are sometimes updating our pricing. And I will have leaders come to me and say, hey, how did the last pricing update land with customers? Or the email that we just sent out, any feedback on what people are thinking about how we're messaging? And other than grabbing from the last conversation that I had or talking to a few CSMs, it can be difficult to look at the wider customer base and scan across everyone or certain segments what the feedback is on that specific topic. So I think that having that information at your fingertips and being able to ask the question very quickly, get the data, and then provide that to other team members, again, just increases the velocity of that feedback loop and helps you quickly move on to the next opportunity at hand.
That's great. Yeah, so we have a nice list running here. So many different areas. That's really great. So product roadmap, customer experience, individual customer situations. One I've heard from our customers as well is, sometimes you're looking at, product data and you see someone who looks like a power user, but it's really only that conversation when the CSM is having a conversation with the customer and really understanding, are they happy with that power use situation? And so I'd love to dive into more detail on some of these examples. And so let's dive into a few specific cases where some of this frontline intelligence has helped to drive the business and how the customer success team got that intelligence into the business.
Yeah. I can throw out an example of one that we were working with in Koala. The way that I think about some of this is how do you take on a per customer basis, the tactics that you take on per customer and turn that into strategy across the customer base, right? And we were working through a very classic customer success manager interview question. You have a really large, important customer that is asking for one feature that nobody else is asking for. Like, how do you solve for that, right? We historically just never had a lens to really look at that type of information. It was totally anecdotal, right? When we started using Quala and we started to hear this feedback, we had one of our biggest customers, Nutanix. They were asking for one of those features, and what we were able to do was to marry their anecdote against the telemetry that we were seeing in their production environment. So we were seeing the ask, we were also seeing how they use the product, but we hadn't heard that ask anywhere else. What we were able to do, since we're tracking telemetry, is we could look at their usage and marry that up with other customers of theirs, right? And we were seeing a lot of similar trends in other customers of their size. So, we were looking at Instacart and Motorola and Credit Karma, and we were seeing very similar trends between them. And we would go to them, and we would say, hey, we're thinking about developing this. Is this something that you would use? Is this something that you would like? And they go, I've been thinking about this forever. Like this would be amazing. And it was a really like, it's kind of a red flag. You're like, why are we not, they're not saying this, but after we hear it from one customer raises their hand, we want to go and find this out from others. We were able to develop that feature for Nutanix and then immediately turn around and have it adopted by lots of other customers. It's small, but it's incredibly powerful. And without the right lens to look at that type of information, without being able to marry anecdote with the data that you're seeing from customer usage, it's not really possible to execute on delivering that type of value to customers. And then, I think the other side of this, in tracking telemetry and tracking customer usage is being able to delineate indicators for churn risk, right? We want to see customers use the product in a certain way. We want to see them get to a certain place by a certain time or achieve certain milestones, as we would do in Quala, for example. And being able to track that and hedge your risk and get ahead of that risk. I think ultimately, that's what we're here for. We're here in customer success to deliver value and, candidly to make sure that the business doesn't have a leaky bucket, right? And getting ahead of that risk, I think, is incredibly important. So that's some of the use cases that we have.
Yeah, two comments I'd like to build on here. One of them is, Seth, you spoke a few times about larger impact items and then seemingly small impact. We have, I don't know if Simon from Camp Minder is on the call today, but he calls those small but mighties. And I love that idea. And you mentioned it too. Like it might seem like a small thing, but it's a very important thing for the customer to feel like we're constantly iterating, we're listening to them, we're improving our offering, and we're making those small but seemingly small but actually large impact items a reality for them. And taking another step back in this data that's coming in from frontline teams, I think it's important for us to recognize that this data is coming in real time, almost every single moment of every single day. So it's less like how, we as marketers I'm a marketer by trade, that can sometimes operate where there's a campaign start and end date. And then you gather all the data as a result, and you define a POV, and then you create another campaign as a result of that feedback. With the customer success interactions that are happening with customers, it's every moment of every day and it never ends. So it's important for us to look at this data and real time and not point in time, which is a little bit different from some of the customer sentiment data we're seeing coming in from NPS comments. Typically that's point in time and it's with one specific stakeholder. Frontline intelligence is every single moment of every single day. And it's also with every single stakeholder that we have conversations with during those daily moments. So that gives us a rich wealth of knowledge that we can draw from to create those big impact and small but mighty impact opportunities as well.
Yeah, I really like the way you're framing that as, those with the mission of, customer success teams to, many times that leading metric being net revenue retention. How do you get at driving the whole book of business, right? It's the tactical and kind of the things you do for everybody so that, all ships rise. That's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Great. So I'd love to dive into triple click on some of this. And I think it's a good setup for our next section here, which is the how, right? So how can SaaS functional leaders use Frontline Insight at scale? And so we can dive a little bit deeper into this example, Seth, that you've been diving us into. Tell us a little bit more about the situation and how you help to drive some of the different decisions in the business.
Yeah, definitely. I made this comment earlier, and I think it's really important in the context of why we collect this information is democratizing it, right? We're on the front lines, but what we do with that information is everything, right? And we were talking earlier about some of the sticking points that our customers run into, and one of those in compliance is really focused on evidence collection for compliance. It's a big challenge, right? Right now it's a very antiquated process. It's extremely manual, and it's one of the sticking points that we always knew customers were running into, but we've been trying to make easier for them for a long time. And coming into this year, into 2021, it was one of our key objectives. This was a problem that we really want to solve for. How do we solve for this, right? And we, when we got Koala implemented, we got it up and running, we started getting the product team involved. We started to pick out like keywords and things that we were paying attention to. We're like manual automation, right? it lends to a feature I think we're going to talk about soon, one that we're really excited about at Qual is topics feature that we're underway with. It's making this even easier for us. But we were able to really dig in and dial into the conversations that the CSMs were having with customers on this pain point. It ended up with one of our hallmark features of Hyperproof that we created this year called Hypersyncs, which cuts people out of the middle and just automates evidence collection so nobody has to do it, right? It's a very short explanation for a very long process and solution. But when we came to that realization of what it was that customers were running into and the hangups with it, it turns into keystone features that gives us a competitive advantage in the rest of the marketplace. That's one that we're using Koala a lot to help contour that feature too. I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit, especially around topics. But at the macro level, it's democratizing that data and getting everybody involved and getting everybody to see and hear the same things that the CSM is seeing and hearing. And I think Sansi made an awesome point earlier that circular loop and that quick feedback allows you to make those decisions a lot quicker and get those things out to customers quicker, right? And not necessarily the way that it is here, but I know that this is the way it is for a lot of SaaS companies. Customers are only with you for 12 months, right? And in that 12 months, you want them to spend as little amount of time implementing and training and as much of that time receiving value, right? The quicker you can get those features back out to them, the quicker you can start delivering that value, the more time they're spending in that life cycle with you and value realization, the more opportunity you have to improve your net revenue retention, Mike. Just like you said, it's a huge metric for customer success teams. That's really what it's the name of the game, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I can't say it any better. I mean, definitely feel the exact same way, Seth. Well said. I think, look, attrition is a natural part of our business. Don't love to talk about it, but churn is something that faces us every single moment of every single day. And we're also focused on how do we grow our partnerships with our customers as well. If we can identify some of those leading indicators of churn or of attrition, that is incredibly powerful for us. And again, it's one of those things that's not easy to do, and how we want to help customer success teams better allocate for churn or better find churn before it actually happens is once we've identified those leading indicators that are at risk. For example, some of our customers, it could be that they've started to mention frustration with pricing, that competitor conversations are now happening between the CSM and the customer. And it could be earlier in the process that they've discovered or shared some frustration around onboarding. So if we know that those are keywords, topics, subjects that are discussed, that are leading indicators of real frustration that can cause churn, then we know to watch for those things. And our Eye of Sauron can scan all CSMs and all customers and look for that information. And then we can build workflows based on that qualitative data that's coming in so we can help CSMs better organize their day. We have customers building those workflows that, again, are helping them get ahead of historic mentions of frustration that can equal churn very quickly, if not address systematically with either process or platform or both.
All right, that's great. And we've heard the flip side of that too. Certainly churn, net revenue retention, make sure that you're not digging negative, but also, driving positive with revenue expansion. That's another case that we've heard a bit. Sansi, I know that's one that came up, in some of our research. You want to say a little bit about that as well?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, finding potential revenue opportunities, those of us in customer success that are responsible for upgrade, upsell, expansion, are also looking for maybe less so on the product enhancement side, unless that equals more revenue, or on the churn side, they're actually looking for addition of seats. They're looking for teams that are growing. They're looking for specific topics that are discussed that's prior to a potential upgrade. And so these customers are creating keywords, topics around those specific opportunities that marry usage in addition to specific conversations that happen around growth opportunities in order to help the CSMs with their spidey senses and attack that potential, I don't know if attack is the right word, address that potential upgrade as soon as possible. Because we all have numbers that we're responsible for every quarter and every year. So this feedback loop can help also power growth as well.
That's great. So there's so it's interesting is, kind of recapping and listening here. So there's so many different angles here to what you're talking about. There's that base of strategy. There is, both on the retention side where it's, the individual customers that you can save if you have the right context and all the different signals from those, as well as kind of those bigger strategic blocks you can move. Seth, as you're getting at, it's not that retention is a problem, but we want to be in the business of delivering value constantly and delivering value, throughout the year. And then on the flip side of that is, as a customer success org, you can monetize some of that value back and looking for those expansion opportunities, which again, Seth, as you and Sansi both said, many businesses often get to that point where that's a big part of the charter as well. And that's the net revenue retention. So you're growing, above that 100% number in the 110, 120% NRR bucket, right?
Yeah. I think it's a little cliche, and I'm glad my boss isn't on the phone to hear this because I don't mean it purely in this way, but it's true. I don't necessarily focus on net revenue retention as like my primary objective, because when you're focused on value, net revenue retention follows, right? If you're focused on like an individual customer and like, what are we going to do for this like one customer, the soup du jour problem of the day, and not focus like strategically across the customer base and the value that you're delivering across, then you're going to get, you get lost in the sauce that way, right?
Incredible point.
When you're focused on value, and not just value, but durable value. I know Sansi hears me talk about this all the time. We do not want transient value. We do not want to deliver value on one day. We want to deliver value 365 days. And if you're focused on that, then the numbers, having your quarterly OKR, your MBR, gets a lot easier. Those conversations are a lot easier that way.
I mean, I'm definitely taking notes, Seth, because I know that Hyperproof just does not churn customers. So you're doing a lot of things right.
Awesome. So let's bring this home for the audience. So we're talking about, we're implying, a strategy here for how you would, or we're implying steps for how customer success can really aid in driving strategy throughout the business. So let's jump right to that. So, Seth, Sansi, let's talk about these steps. What are the steps, and what would you tell the audience for how they can do this in their businesses as well?
Yeah, the first one for me, is thinking about figuring out where you want to hunt, right? And that's a product of asking the right questions and listening intentionally, right? And for us, the example that I gave earlier was manual process, right? It's something that we want to automate, and asking the right questions of like, where do we need to deliver value? Where are your pain points? Where are your sticking points? Where do you want to see improvements? That tells us where we need to focus on, right? So that's the very first one for me. Sansi, what about you?
No, I agree. Incredibly important. You have to, begin at the begin, as REM says. Fun little reference. And understand like, what does the world look like and what's the potential impact? Where should we start? It's, we put where to begin at a premium. When we're getting a sea of data thrown at us every single moment of every single day, how do we find the signal in the noise? And what does that mean for the next steps that we see here?
Yeah. And I think those next steps, Sansi, are definitely, once you figure that out and you started collecting that data, it's the business discussions that you have internally with that data, right? Who do you go to? What is it that you're talking about? For us, we have a lot of product conversations where, we're kind of de facto product managers as CSMs at Hyperproof because of our proximity to our customers and how they use the product. We're doing a lot of that type of work, going and having those, data backed conversations with product about here's where the pain points are. Here, going back to sales or account management and saying, here's your business potential in the marketplace, or here's the upsell potential with these customers if we can do X, Y, Z. It's taking that data back and actioning on it. Collating it is just one part of the equation. It's what do you do with it after the fact that I think is makes the picture whole.
Yeah, that's again, another good point. And I would say when it comes to collating the data or gathering the data, that's again another critical point where many of us get so lost because it can be an incredibly intensive process for us to go through and mine the interactions that we've had over the last 3 months or whatever your cadence looks like to then provide a solid POV. And I think that's why many of us, even though, being the canary in the coal mine, knowing what we feel is the potential opportunity for us, or, if what we don't act on where the risk is, for us to know innately that we believe what those things are, but unable to gather the data because we're so busy in our day-to-day, actions of just trying to drive the business forward, that can put us a little bit feeling like we're on the back foot as we attempt to make those recommendations to the broader team. So gathering the critical data can be a really time-intensive step. And I think sometimes why we just fall back on our opinions, which, can sometimes not be that helpful. We want those, to your point, Seth, those fact-based recommendations, which is the last step here.
Yeah, and I think, especially in the early stage environment, we're talking a lot about focusing on what we should be doing, right? Or what, and I think the flip side of that is if you're focused on what you should be doing, then you're not focused on what you shouldn't be doing. And we only have so much time, and we only have so much resourcing available to us to head in the right direction. We don't want to go in the wrong direction, right? We don't want to waste those resources. We don't want to go down a path for too long and not make adjustments. And I think that's the other side of all of this is, we focus so much on like, what's the right thing to do. And I think it's also important to think about like, what is the right thing to not do or to not focus on.
Thank you for that reminder. It's a good one.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And it's so hard, right? So, I mean, being in those meetings as well, right? Everybody's got their different things that they're hearing, whether it's on the customer success side or on the sales side or on the marketing side or on the product manager side. And, having a fact base that the whole team can look at and make a judgment on, whether you do something or not, that's hugely important. And exactly what you guys are getting at. That's really great. Great. Well, we are at the end of our prepared remarks here. I see a few questions coming in. So let's dive into the Q&A. Before we do that, given we've spoken so much about Quala throughout, I'm going to give a 60-second bit more detail about the Quala platform for folks to see it. Again, if you want more information, click that request Quala info, and then we'll jump right in to the Q&A. So I will be super quick, giving a very quick overview. And so, what is Quala? You mentioned at the onset that we're pulling in your data from other systems. We do that in a very quick way. Our onboarding, we measure in days and weeks, certainly not months. What we're doing, we're creating a unified view of customers. So you have all your customer information in one place, including a health score, including revenue on the books and when your renewal is. You can then double click into any particular customer, looking at the next slide here, to have all that data, what we talked about, that single pane of glass, how your customers are using your product, how your CSMs are assessing their conversation to get that qualitative spidey sense, power user. But is the user happy? Is the user engaged on your calls? Other information you might want to have in here, such as all your emails going back and forth from customers, notes from your CRM. With all that great data, within Quala, we're able to trigger work for customer success managers, customer success teams. So it could be, depending on how the data is reading, trigger a rescue workflow or trigger an upsell opportunity or get ahead of a renewal that's coming in a couple months. And so all that work can be triggered in Quala. Also because you have all this data, and a lot of what Seth and Sansi is getting at here, we can mine through all of that qualitative data that's really hard, to parse otherwise. So all the emails, all the CRM notes, so that you can track, how often is the topic of difficulty onboarding coming up with my customers? How many times does it come up over time? Which customers are saying it? And then really importantly, how much revenue is on the books? So that as Seth and Sansi are getting at, you can make some really smart judgments on, which problems should we tackle with our limited resources. And of course, with all of that, you can double click to get the exact context. So if you're trying to understand difficulty onboarding, seeing every email, every CRM note all in one place without having to go to 10 different systems to get the context for, well, how are people talking about difficulty onboarding? How are folks talking about a new feature, a new use case? How are folks talking about different opportunities in the customer experience? So that's Quala in, I don't know if that was 60 seconds, but I felt like I went pretty quick. Again, if you want more info, please click the request Quala info at the top. And with that, we will dive into Q&A. So I'll look over towards Jenna's way on the Q&A. And the first question is, how is Quala getting all of that data in? So I will turn that over to Sansi and Seth.
Sure. So we have a bunch of different one-click connectors that you can bring data in from your CRM, from wherever you capture notes or interactions with your customer. We actually just launched a partnership with a vendor that gives us the ability to natively provide these connects, which is pretty exciting for us. And then we also have an open API where you can integrate your usage data as well if you would like, and bring that in from your platform into Koala. And we had tried to make it as easy as possible. Obviously, the one-click connects are just need an admin to OAuth, and then customer success teams have the data at their fingertips. Any other thoughts there, Seth?
No, I could just say how we do this. We use the Beacon API to pull telemetry in from our production environment, so we can see what customers are doing in their instance on the back end. We also we integrate right now with Salesforce. That's what we pull in the business information. So we keep Salesforce as our system of record for contacts, renewal dates, contract amounts. We pull that data in, so we're able to manage that against other things that we're seeing in the tool. So we get that single pane of glass in one spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. We have a double click on that data question. Can you talk about how you capture customer communication from non-standard sources like individual email boxes, Outlook, Gmail, etc.? Some of my clients don't have central communication channels. So how does Quala do that?
Sure. So we are a Google partner as well as a Microsoft partner. So again, you're just looking at OAuthing into the either Gmail or into Outlook. And then Quala brings all that information into the Quala platform on a CSM by CSM basis. Although I will mention, if there are other members of your team on the front lines having conversations with customers day in and day out, whether it's product managers, marketing managers, analysts, what have you, you can connect their email and bring that in. So yeah, we have those partnerships in place, and it's a few clicks. You bring the data in, and then you can mine it.
Very cool. And of course, on the flip of the question, I kind of reading into folks thinking about the other side of that. If you do have a pooled CSM model where you have, 5 CSMs serving, 1,000 customers, you don't know who's going to come in, you don't know which CSM is going to get assigned, to that pool. Quala also solves for that as well. Great. So next question here is, what's the best way for customer success leaders and product leaders to work together? I feel like we've peppered this one throughout the session, so let's go a little deeper on that.
That's the billion-dollar question. I think I made a comment earlier about how we're kind of de facto product managers in CS. Mm-hmm. It's the same for the product team. They're kind of de facto customer success managers in a way, right? We're a really tight-knit group. They have standing places on a lot of our customer calls. We do a lot of things like manage rollout. So a feature that we're not ready to GA, but we want to test with a certain set of customers, we'll work with product on that. We really, we make them a part of our team because we have a shared mission of delivering value to customers. And, we have different ways of doing that. Customer success and the products team's way of doing that is building and delivering an amazing product that customers love, right? But we can't do it without them. They can't do it without us. So there's a lot of synergy that exists there in being on the same page. And we're just, at least at Hyperproof, we're really, really tightly integrated together. We have a lot of cadences, making sure that we're on the same page. We're sharing a lot of information back and forth. We have Koala, they have Tableau in our data warehouse, and we're constantly going back with each other and answering and asking questions. And that feedback loop, I think without it, we just wouldn't be where we are without those types of synergies. That's how we do it. That's how I think about it.
Mm.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. A similar topic came up in our last Humans of Customer Success Community Hour, where the comment was made. I think it was Nitin Walia from Rapid Ratings. Mentioned that while the customer success team or in his org, client success are the titled people with that, in their names, it's really the whole business, right? That's in the business of customer success, from, sales getting the right customers, marketing finding the right prospects, product obviously delivering the product, finance making sure the books are all right. That's what it's all about. Customers really are at the center of all of our businesses. Cool. So third question here from Jenna. How could this help with getting the right customers in the first place from sales and marketing? All right, so we talked a little bit of customer success and product. Now we'll talk about customer success and sales and marketing. So how does that feedback loop work?
Yeah, we have a pretty well-defined ICP at Hyperproof. But while I say well-defined, I have to add that it's also constantly evolving, right? We're learning about new use cases, we're solving for new problems, and that changes what our ICP looks like, right? Sales has no way to know those wins or those changes that we see without us communicating it back to them, right? And what Koala allows us to do, our sales leadership is in Koala, right? They're creating topics for themselves of things that they're interested in hearing about, like a big one, this is nerdy compliance specific stuff, but this concept of a unified control framework in compliance is the new age of what technology compliance is going to look like for the future, right? How do we reduce redundancy and reduce our workload on our compliance teams and our organization as a whole to satisfy as many requirements across standards as possible? It's a really new concept, right? In order for sales to be armed with the right information and relevant wins of actual things that happen with real Hyperproof customers, go out and talk to prospects about it, we have to get that information back to them. So we're in constant loops about topics like that. It's awesome to be able to have stakeholders like them self-serve for that information too. They can come and get their own questions answered. They can start their own workflows. They can get their own kind of concepts up and running inside of the tool and start getting their own feedback. It's really a much more streamlined process of having a lens like this, of getting those wins back to sales and giving sales the information that they need to go out and win more deals. So we're seeing that. We're seeing that now.
I would add on to that. Great points, Seth. As sales leaders and marketing leaders, sometimes the longer that we spend in a space, the more we can fall into verbiage and language that makes sense to us, but not necessarily to our customers. And so with being able to mine communications that are happening between sales managers and prospects and between CSMs and customers means that we have access to the vernacular and language that actual individuals in market are using. And for us to be able to see all of those communications across the team agent or manager and the actual customer or prospect can help us understand how are they talking about the issue that we're solving and the value that they're experiencing as a result of a lot of the sort of sales and marketing jargon that we typically fall into as we just get more and more expert in our space. So keeping ourselves close to the customers and listening to how they talk about what we do can be really pivotal in how we communicate as sales managers and also how we communicate and create collateral as marketing leaders.
That's great. Well, thank you, Sansi. Thank you, Seth. I'm just checking Jenna for any more questions. Oh, we got one more coming in here. All right, so one more question here. So you're focused on customer success now. The question is, have you integrated into chat and email for customer support platforms as well to get at kind of a broader overall customer sentiment?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for NPS data, customer survey data, support desks like Zendesk or chat like Intercom, if that's one of the ways that you communicate daily with your customers, then we would absolutely recommend you be bringing that information into Koala. So again, you can use that as another rich data source or more rich data sources to then mine and learn from, and then provide those fact-based recommendations to the rest of your team.
Right. And certainly, while much of our conversation here has been in the context of customer success teams, certainly, emails coming back and forth with customer support teams, or Quala in the context of, this fits better with a customer support team or better with a sales team. For now, Seth mentioned sales and CS are both using Quala topics as well. But of course, any of these frontline teams get a ton of value from it. Or if product just wants to hear what all these teams are hearing, they can also use it for themselves as well.
I noticed a Q&A from Kelly to just make sure that we answer that. There's a question about workflows. So you can create workflows in the platform. If it's important to you, okay, we have the data, we have recommendations. How does that mean for what the activities are of our own team members? So definitely workflows is a big part of how to drive outcomes with the data that you're seeing. Yes,
absolutely. Thanks for calling that out, Sansi. Great. And I'm getting an all clear from Jenna. So just want to say another huge thank you. Seth, thank you so much for being on the webinar. Really appreciate all the insights. I haven't spoken to anybody who's on the webinar yet, but I'm sure, they're super pumped about everything you shared. Sonciary, thank you as always for sharing your great insights throughout the session. Thank you, everybody, out there. If you have questions, feel free to email me directly at mike@quala.io. You can, of course, click that request Quala info button at the top. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.